All right, y'all, we're in chapter 6. So, key points for chapter 6: verbal following, exploring, and focusing skills. There's a lot of really good vocabulary in this chapter that you're going to want to remember. It's going to take you through the program, and you're going to see it on licensure. So, pay close attention. The big idea for this chapter is that good interviewing looks natural but is highly intentional. Okay, so we have a purpose. There's a lot of information that we want to collect during that interviewing phase of gathering information. But at the same time, and this is something that's going to take time, all right, the more you do it, the more confident and competent you will feel as you're doing the interviewing process with a client. It's going to take time. We really want it to feel natural, right? Like we're just having a conversation, we're just gathering information, and we're doing it in a way that builds rapport, builds trust and relationship with the client. Okay, so some really important core skills here, and I'm going to give you some examples for each. I hope it's helpful. If you need clarification or have questions on any of them, just let me know. So, of course, number one is open-ended questions. This is pretty easy. Tell me what brought you in today. Why are you in counseling? Or tell me a little bit more about your relationship with your mom. These are all open-ended questions. They're not yes/no questions. It's going to provide us with a lot of information. Okay. Next, there are closed-ended questions, which sometimes are necessary, and sometimes it's where we start even with children, right? Sometimes they don't give us a ton of information at first, and so we start with some easy yes/no closed-ended questions. An example of a closed-ended question that we might do during an interview or in an intake biopsychosocial is, "Are you having suicidal thoughts today?" It's yes or no. After we get an answer, perhaps it's yes, then we ask the open-ended follow-up questions. Tell me more about that. We're going to ask more details. Some will be closed-ended questions and some will be more open-ended, okay? So it gives us a starting point of where to go. Next is reflection, okay? So it sounds like you're overwhelmed caring for your mom, starting your new job, being a mom yourself. We're reflecting back on the information that the client has chosen to share with us, and that can be really helpful because it's showing, again, that empathy that we talked about in the last chapter. The next skill is paraphrasing. So if a client says something like, "I can't sleep, my kids are driving me crazy since I lost my job," we might reply by saying something like, "It sounds like losing your work, losing your job has brought a lot of stress into your home and it's made it really difficult to rest." So, this is another technique to build trust, but it also clarifies and it opens the door for more reflection from the client. Okay, so that's paraphrasing. Next is clarification. Okay, so let's say a client says something like, "Things have been totally crazy at my house lately, and I just can't take it anymore." Okay, so that's kind of vague in a sense, right? Like, totally crazy, can't take it anymore. It doesn't really explain what is happening or who is involved or how long this has been going on or even what the client is necessarily feeling beyond knowing that they can't take it anymore. So, a clarifying response from the social worker might be something like, "When you say things are crazy at home, can you give me an example of what a typical day might look like for you?" Okay, so this is providing us with more details and clarification so we have a launching point of where to go from there. Okay, so don't be afraid to clarify, ask follow up questions, get more information. Okay, next is summarization. So, in social work interviewing, a summary pulls things together. Okay, it pulls together key emotions from maybe a longer client statement. So, and it also checks for understanding, by the way, and it helps clients see patterns. Okay. Example: a social worker might say, so far you have noted that you're losing your job and caring for your sick parent has left you feeling really overwhelmed and tired. So this helps us to organize details. So we're bringing things together. The clients told us a lot of information. Now we're summarizing it. We're bringing it together and we're checking our facts. So again, assessing for our understanding. Is what we're saying accurate and true? have we left anything out? And it helps to kind of organize thinking for the client as well. Like, yes, that is a good summary. That is the ultimate reason why I am here. And it gives us a better idea of what the client's goals may be. All right, then is focusing. So in social work interviewing, focusing is a skill that it kind of helps to guide scattered thinking, or to guide a scattered conversation back to a very specific or important topic without cutting off the client, okay? So sometimes a client comes in and they don't know where to start, or they're very scattered in their thinking in terms of like there's just so many issues, they are just kind of all over the place, it seems. So in focusing, it helps to kind of narrow the discussion so that the worker, the social worker, and the client can address urgent needs or to understand core issues. It helps us to prioritize what's most important, and then where do we go from there, okay? So here's an example of focusing. Maybe a client gives like a broad statement, right? Like, I don't know what to do anymore. My landlord's threatening to evict me. My teenager is failing math at school. My arthritis is acting up. I can't sleep at night. My car broke down. Like, holy cow, that is overwhelming. That is a lot. So using focusing, the social worker might say, you have a lot of heavy things on your plate right now, and like, I would be overwhelmed if I were you too. It sounds like you're overwhelmed. Since the landlord gave you 3-day notice this morning, let's look at the housing situation first today, and then we can schedule a time after today to address some of these other concerns. So we're bringing it back to what's most important, and we always fall back on safety and daily needs. So we need to make sure we can secure housing for this client. That's number one priority. Okay, I hope that helps to give some examples. A couple other key points, going back to open-ended questions. Open-ended questions invite stories. So instead of, were you upset? Try something like, what was going through your mind when that happened? Okay, so it gives us more details. It helps the client process through some of their feelings. Open-ended questions invite more information. We want to avoid interrogation mode. Okay, so too many questions can make an interview or an intake feel more like a rigid conversation rather than building a relationship. So, somewhere in between it all, we want to maybe take a pause or, make it sound more conversational rather than that we're just checking off boxes. I'm sure you've all been to an appointment, a doctor, or maybe even a counselor where they're just checking the box. They're just asking questions, right? And that kind of feels impersonal and, I don't know, just kind of like they're not really hearing you. And that can feel frustrating. So we kind of want to find our flow in how we ask questions that don't make it sound like an interrogation. We've got to get the information, but we don't want it to be an interrogation. We want to follow the client's lead, but maintain purpose, okay? So clients are going to come to us with multiple concerns. They're going to present with a lot of different issues and challenges. And part of our job, going back to focusing, is helping the client identify where to start. So following the client's lead is important. We're gathering a lot of information in our brain as they are talking. We're doing this through active listening, but we want to maintain purpose. And again, we always start with assessing for safety and safety needs. And finally, summarizing is underrated, y'all. It communicates that we have not only listened, but we are hearing the client, and it helps to organize complicated information. So summarize, go back at the end of really long, conversation or a long spiel from the client, and use your summarizing skills to kind of bring it all together, okay? Again, it assesses for understanding, clarification, and it helps to prioritize what complicated information do we need to start with, okay? One thing to remember, every single question or response that you choose influences where the conversation goes next. Okay, y'all, one more chapter for this week. See you in a minute.